shawty, she calling me MVP. I be on time, it's something you ain't never seen before. They call me the Dama, really want my whole team to score. Damn, yeah, too icy, yeah, too clean, yeah, my zone, yeah, 2-3, yeah, got shooters that hit from deep, bust like Giannis, yeah, too mean. Bright lights like we at the garden, on P, don't get me started. Whole team walk in, we the party. If I can't make the play, I'ma lob it. If you jump, that's right on your head. Had to put him to sleep, go to bed. I'm a star, drop 50 and left. From the logo, like I'm Steph. Put it up, knock him down every time. Going hard like my life on the line. Catch me on the coast, I would've dime. Never losing, I put it on mine. Had to get out my shell, I've been laying low. They get real when it comes to the playoffs. They fight with me, know it's a KO.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another live episode of the Pit Press Live. My name's Eric Moulton, your host for tonight. I'm joined by two rascals all the way from the Bay, Mr. Ricky Thompson. How's it going tonight, man?
It is going. Glad to see the end of the week here. Happy the Lobos will be on TV tomorrow, but happy to be here with Lobo Nation and talk about the last game and looking forward. Got some football news as well. So I want to give a shout out to all the listeners, everybody in the chat. We really appreciate your thoughts and comments out there. And Mr. Justin Chavez for giving us a shout out today on Twitter. But I'm doing well and glad to talk sports here and not be at work anymore.
Yeah, well, happy to have you on, man. Let's get into it. But before we do, joining us all the way from the beautiful city of Silver City, New Mexico, the voice of Western New Mexico Mustangs and a Lobo fan since 1970, Mr. Ed Nunez. What's up, man?
You know what? It's going good. The Western New Mexico, we dropped a couple of last nights. Lubbock Christian. Lubbock Christian women are really good. They're a good team. They're very fundamental. They won't wow you. All they do is play fundamental basketball, set the screens, make the free throws. So they beat the Western New Mexico women. The Christian men beat the Western New Mexico men last night. So Western New Mexico facing off against Midwestern State tomorrow afternoon. And so, yeah, I've got a day of kind of solitude here today. We didn't have much going on. Went to the gym and worked out at the university. So, yeah, and then you got Air Force tomorrow, too, so I'll have to have my wife tape the game. And I won't be able to watch it when I get home, though, because those road trips, man, I'm just so sleepy. But I'll watch it on Sunday. So I'm looking forward to that. UNM playing very, very well right now. And it's an Air Force team that's dropped 10 straight. But I think Coach Pitino has pretty much kept things even keeled, no matter how big the win is or those two losses that they've had. he's the same, and he's made that clear. They've got to get the job done tomorrow afternoon.
Yeah, well, we were just talking off air about that a little bit, Ed, about Patino's demeanor kind of in the press conference. But I think the motto this year, right? They're not really overhyped about the wins. They don't really ever get too low about the losses. They're kind of even keel, kind of going about everything with this the job's not done mentality, which is, I think, the right attitude to approach the rest of the season with. Still a lot to play for. I mean, still second half of conference play left. They kind of slowly solidifying themselves in the NCAA tournament, but they still have a few more opportunities to just make sure that they do get in, and they keep rolling. Not only are they winning, but they're winning really impactfully. I think the last 4 games they've won by at least or an average of 18 points. So it's not like they're just beating teams barely, but they're actually punishing teams and putting them away. So the Lobos kind of roll into this one, beat Colorado State 87-65. But before we get into that one, looks like Ryan has joined us backstage. I'm going to go ahead and bring him in now. What's up, Ryan? How you doing, man?
How is everybody doing?
Good, man. How about you?
I'm hanging in there. Nothing like bronchitis. Good to be back. Thank you guys for having me on. I'll let you guys get into it because it looks like you've definitely done a good job without me.
And I'm just kind of resizing the screens here so we all fit and we're not kind of.
Well, Ryan, I know you were at the football conference the other day. I know Lobo Coach X spoke about some of the 51 players and the new guys coming in. What did you get out of that while listening to Coach X?
Well, I really like Jason Eck. This is not a new me or a new improved version of me. I think for the listeners out there, I'm saying it again, wasn't too thrilled with Bronco Mendenhall, the hire, and then hindsight's 2020. I've said that a million times. I guess Jason Eck had said more things to the media before this press conference, not that, we're special, than Bronco had done in an entire year of being here. I think Eck knows exactly the opportunity he has. He keeps saying how good the facilities are here, which I think to anybody else kind of blows your mind, but he really likes it. As far as it was National Signing Day on Wednesday. And for everybody that listens to Jeff Symbieta, I had overheard him talking at the press conference that this is a FCS all-star team, which kind of is, excites you. A lot of FCS guys transfer to the P4, P5, and can have success. X seems very enthusiastic. I'm enthusiastic. I think a lot of people are enthusiastic. I think he's showing a lot more face than what we've seen over the last year. But the thing that's in the back of my mind is that schedule next year, which is at Michigan, at UCLA, at Boise, at UNLV. So obviously he gets a full-blown mulligan in the first year, but I'm very excited. You have to remember he's pretty much doing it with his guys. Bronco did it with Danny's guys. Just throwing that out there again.
Yeah, so I mean they'll be bringing back 55 players from Broncos guys, though, or Danny's guys, whoever they were, including linebacker Dimitri Johnson, who got an extra year because of this Pavia rule that's now taking effect. A few other quick hits I wanted to go through, Eric, if that's okay. New Mexico State has lined up its spring football game. It's not going to be played in Las Cruces, so it will be at the Bulldog Bowl in Artesia, where I have actually played. It's a great facility, probably a better locker room than what they actually have at New Mexico State, I would think. But it is a great field. Exciting that they're doing it somewhere different. Our Lady Lobos played CSU at home and lost 69-63 on Monday night, I believe, Tuesday night, I believe that was. Lobos ladies will play UNLV who's first in the conference tomorrow at 3 p.m. Mountain. Just a few high school notes. High school basketball, maybe Ed could tell us more about this guy and this team, but Ryan Gonzalez, Volcano Vista, hit a state record 17 threes. Eric, did you make 17 threes in your whole high school career?
I might have made 17 threes in like 6 or 7 games.
Okay, I didn't shoot 1 3, so I think that is pretty incredible. I think he finished with 60 some odd points to top Shane Dumas Sanchez record of 60 points a few years ago. High school football news: Adrian Gonzalez is named head football coach at Santa Fe High for the Demons. He's coached at West Las Vegas in the past and was the OC at Santa Fe High the last few years, and I think they are pretty bad at football, so that will be a tall task. Cibola has hired a new football coach who many might be familiar with, David Howes, who led Rio Rancho to state titles in 2014 and 2016. Also coached with Danny at UNM. I believe he was a safeties coach there. So Cibola getting a great coach, and they've really struggled ever since the expansion of the different schools on the west side there. It seems like their sports programs have taken a dip, but hopefully this will be something good. And then Lobo recruiting news. I think everyone saw on signing day, Lobos recruit signed the deal. So it's a done deal for Isaac Williamson from Eleanor Roosevelt High School in Eastvale, California, listed at 6 foot or 6'1", scored 61 or no, that was the other guy. But this guy had a highlight reel dunk the other night. He, in his interviews, says he loves to play defense. He, along with Jalen Petty, another guard, 6 foot, from Seattle area, are the 2 Lobos signees right now for this period. And I think that will be the only ones we'll see until probably the later months of the year here when that time opens up again. So 2 great guards. Looks like Lobo basketball has on the way here. Pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah,
So
Ryan disappeared on us, but I'll go ahead and kick it over to Ed with some of the high school news. I'm not sure if you caught
My bad.
the kid from Cleveland with the 17 threes. Ed, you probably seen him play in person.
It's actually Volcano Vista. It's Ryan
Volcano
Gonzalez.
Vista. Okay.
Yeah, and actually, I haven't seen them in person yet. I haven't got them in person. I saw them on ProView Networks a couple of times, and they've got the thing about Ryan Gonzalez is they've got Owino, the big man, Kenyon Owino is their number 1 guy. He's going to Montana, and this this young man is one of the best bigs that's ever come out of New Mexico. So he's their number 1 option. David Lund is their second option. David Lund was offered a football scholarship by Penn State, and he doesn't play football. His dad played football. David Lund, as a sophomore, is a monster. He gets 2 feet in the paint, forget it. He's going to slam it or put it in, man. He's a very good player. So Ryan Gonzalez is solid, but 62 points, beating Shane Dumas Sanchez's record of 60. When I opened the article in the Journal, James Yotis got it in before deadline. He mentioned that. I was like, oh man, he's their 3rd or 4th option. They've got another kid, but he said that he felt it was going to be a special night. He made like 5, I think, in the first quarter. And Kenyon Owino, the big man, said in the paper they made it. They wanted him to get the record. Pablo Romero, I can't remember if he's from Springer or what school he's from, had just broken the record a month ago. So now Ryan Gonzalez, a month later, breaks it with 17, and that these 3-point shooting. If they broke it in 1 month, you got to wonder who's going to break it next, because that record didn't stand even a month before Ryan Gonzalez broke it. And of course, the Hawks, the number 1 ranked team in 5A, are looking for an unprecedented 4 championship. Are on a roll. They beat Piedra Vista last night. So, and Ryan Gonzalez, though, what an amazing performance. Just a real quick comment on David Howes over there at Cibola. I thought he coached the tight ends. I'm not sure. Maybe whatever he coached at UNM. Now at Cibola, this is what I had heard. He was thinking about not even applying. He was the assistant coach out there. And then he applied at the last minute, and athletic director Doug Dorme, very familiar with David Howes from Rio Rancho. Now, Rick, you mentioned that Cibola is kind of taking a hit there with, the talent kind of going to Rio Rancho and Cleveland. but their numbers are down. But I think Coach Howes will do a good job there. And, Cibola's basketball team is doing better this year. Their girls basketball team finished, I believe, with 1 victory last year. They've got 9 or 10 victories this season. So they're trending up a little bit. But when those schools were built, Rio Rancho and Cleveland, it really took a lot of talent away from them with their athletic programs, which were always pretty solid. So I think Coach Howes will do a good job out there. And again, a shout out to Ryan Gonzalez. Maybe my son and I will get him on Road to the Pit here soon.
I will leave that to you guys. That would be a good episode to follow. Definitely a good interview. But in some other college basketball news, just kind of from around the country, important stuff for Lobo fans in particular. Let me just pull up the banner here. I just had it pulled up.
St. John's beat UConn.
Yeah, I was actually going to talk about VCU first. VCU won at Dayton 73-68. They move into second place in the A10, right behind George Mason, who's actually making kind of like a mid-season surge to kind of play in that conference. A potential bid stiller coming out of the A10, I think. But VCU is kind of on fire right now. I think after they lost at UNM, they've kind of rattled off some nice wins and actually shooting the ball really well. I think like reporters like John Rothstein and Fanta, those guys are kind of taking notice and putting everyone on notice about VCU coming, and they're just playing really good basketball right now. And as Ryan mentioned, number 12 St. John's won at number 19 UConn in a really good headliner game this evening. They won 68-62. UConn started that game extremely hot. I think they jumped out to a 14-point lead in the first half. Kind of uncharacteristic of them, hitting a bunch of back-to-back threes to kind of jump on that lead, but then St. John's goes on their own 8-0 run to climb back. And again, that St. John's and Rick Pitino defense is really tough to beat. So Ryan or Rick, Ed, I don't know if any of you guys caught some of that game, but did you wanted to get some of your thoughts on it if you did? No one watched it.
You're talking about VCU?
Or St. John's?
Either I had St. John's and I had St. John's and UConn, and then I had VCU and Dayton on. Dayton came out swinging. So did UConn. UConn was up big. So St. John's battled back. They got their defense together. VCU is a really good team to watch. I think a lot of people are still high on the A10. What Loyola Chicago's first year is in there. But yeah, I did not know that. I haven't kept up on my college basketball like I have in years past. George Mason is 18-5 and 9-1. His name is escaping me, and it's going to try Jim Larinaga. He came from George Mason. He took them to the Sweet 16 in 2006. Watch out, Lobo fans. Florida's hot. Indiana's hot. Read between the lines there. Yeah, no, VCU is a good. I mean, VCU is a good team. They've got some pretty good players. Obviously, Max Shulga, but Joe Bamasil, he's still averaging over 16 points a game. I mean, not to bore you with stats, but since New Mexico, they've won 10 of 12, and that puts them at 9-2 in the or 9 of 11. That puts them 9-2 in the A10, which I don't know if it's necessarily a 2-bid league this year with what I've seen. Obviously, I think VCU probably gets in, and if George Mason steals a bid. But those are two pertinent games on national exposure tonight for the Lobos. St. John's is probably a 2 seed. Just FYI.
I was just going to say two other games in conference. Boise is up 65-46 with about 7 minutes left in the second half in Boise. And Utah State leads Fresno by 19 at halftime. And I've seen a lot of bracketologists this week. You know, obviously we know the 3 in the Mountain West that are in, but some bracketologists have Boise on the outside bubble, or whatever they're calling it, the outer bubble. And they're playing really good basketball right now. Obviously, they would need to make a big run or possibly, win the Mountain West tournament to get in. But Boise is getting mentioned again. New Mexico getting a lot of love from our field of 6 68 guys. Rocco Miller, who's come on the show, we're going to invite him again down the stretch here to see where the Lobos sit. But I've seen the Lobos, I don't know, as high as 9 and mostly 10 in most people's brackets. Right now, San Diego State sits out about a 10 or 11 that I've seen, and Utah State is about a 9. So Mountain West looking at 3 schools, possibly a 4th if Boise State can pull off a miracle down the stretch here. So that would be good for the conference.
Ian Martinez had 15 points at the half. Just an FYI. Jerry Palm of CBS Sports has UNM as an 8-9 against West Virginia. Darian DeVries, who took over that job, he was at St. Louis last year. His son plays for the team. Very good. I wish Neff was on. He knows more than I. West Virginia, with a big win over KU. We're in those old Jerry West unis like a week or 2 ago. Jerry Palm has UNM again as an 8-9 seed. Hypothetically, if that were real, they would win. They would get Bruce Pearl and Johnny Braum of Auburn. That would be quite the second round matchup.
Yeah, Coach Tom Moser released a podcast yesterday talking about a lot of the same stuff, and now kind of thinking the Mountain West could realistically maybe get in 3 teams, but maybe Boise State come in and be that 4th team, because they did mention like a Utah State, New Mexico, San Diego State being the shoo-ins, and then Boise State maybe having to win out, which I think would be extremely difficult with the matchups they still had kind of looming. A lot of those tough matchups are kind of played at home, though. So it's going to be interesting coming down the second match. But focusing more on this game, UNM defeats Colorado State 87-65. And Rick, you had some notes here that the Lobos, again in back-to-back games, score 52 points in the second half. Really led by Casey Evans. Nate Clifford and Jalen Lake were 2 guys that we kind of talked about being 2 of the guys that the Lobos needed to focus on. Definitely, I was comparing some stats. Nate Clifford and Jalen Lake actually contribute to 40% of CSU's overall scoring from a point perspective, and the Lobos actually held them to a combined 13 points. But we'll get into that. And I kind of want to pass it over to you, Rick, to kind of get down on some of the notes that you have here and kind of take it away to.
Yeah, this Lobo team, I feel like they're a ticking time bomb every game, even against Wyoming when they were down a bunch of points early. I never get really too worried, because it's just a matter of time. I feel like some type of torture, right? It whittles away at you. They whittle away at you until it's just a huge gash, and then it just lets everything loose like the water out of a dam. And we've seen 2 really good teams, Utah State, now CSU, just get totally deflated. San Diego State, they met the same fate, and so did Boise. So UNM now has blown out the other top 4 teams in the conference and made it look like they have complete control. And I think a big part of it, Eric, is the change in their mentality that we've been talking about. They're wanting to play that more physical villain, bad guy. And True Washington really led the way. He's played physical on defense. For me and Nelly, his defense continues to grow. And when that defense, gets up and it pushes those teams out of their sets, like I always talk about, pushes them to the top of their key, it makes a guy like Nate Clifford try to play hero ball, where a guy like Donovan Dent, he's playing patiently into the first half, right, and letting the game come to him because he has the other commodities on his team. Clifford, shot himself out of the game early, it felt like. Casey Evans, wow. I feel like he's grown so much since the first time we played them. Having to fill in for Isaiah Stevens really did a great job. But once he got into that foul trouble in the second half, I feel like that was the difference maker. It was that bang bang play. We don't know if True Washington gets that play if we're in Moby, right? But Lobos got it, and from there it was pretty much downhill. Ed, I know you were at the game. What stood out to you, I guess, before that point in the game where they took over, and then what really changed when they just ran away with it?
You made good points. The top teams in the conference, they've run away from convincingly. You look at that Boise State game, the last 5 minutes of that first half, or it was just were unbelievable the way they played. Maybe we're taking it for granted a little bit. Maybe I am watching them play because they've been very efficient. The second half field goals for Colorado State, 9 of 25, 36%. You always say, look inside the numbers. Chris Berman says that used to say that all the time. Clifford, 3 of 15 from the field, 1 of 8 from 3. Lake, 1 of 8, 0 of 4. So New Mexico did their job defensively. And we said that. I asked Coach Pitino in the press conference about Borovichinen. He didn't score much, only had 4, but he chased Clifford. Noland chased him around. And we had mentioned Noland being a key factor. I'd said that. I thought he was due for a big pitch shooting game. We know he can do it. 7 of 7, 3 of 3, 19 points. Another big physical guard that's, the bench between him and Milicevic, they had 25 points. And again, Coach Pitino has kind of gone away from Appelhand's Braden for now, but he could put him back in any time. Dotson played 1 minute. Tiki Ali Tiki, 2:14, didn't play much either. But I thought Noland and Milicevic, especially Noland, really contributed off the bench as well. Now, Nelly, a slow first half. Donovan Den, a slow first half. In our group text, I thought Donnie would get it going in the second half. He did. Nelly, another 18 and 11. And one of the questions Ryan asked me on press row on Thursday or Wednesday was, what does Nelly rank amongst Lobo bigs, greats of the past? And he's only going to be here 2 years. I kind of liken him to Tim Williams in that regard. Tim Williams is pretty good. He wasn't here all 3 years. You got Hards, you've got Kenny, you've got Luke. He's somewhere down in the second tier, but man, 18 and 11, 5 block shots. Now, Kenny Thomas had said this the other day on 610. He felt Nelly should do better blocking shots, and he had 5 blocks. I texted Kenny a little while ago. I said, hey, man, he listened to you, 5 blocks. So the defense at the rim. Colorado State had a couple of point-blank looks at the rim, and they looking for Nelly, weren't even close. So his presence in the paint was really important there defensively. And I think to your point, Rick, about True Washington, he's got a challenge on Saturday with the Air Force guard Ethan Taylor. And so I think he's got to keep going. And Coach Pitino is Air Force's last 10 straight. So you got to keep him challenged like, hey, man, who's going to stop Ethan Taylor? The guy leads them in scoring at 15.6, 5.8 rebounds, 3.2 assists. They got to keep that challenge. Keep going. Keep the momentum going. Coach Pitino said the job's not done. Everyone wants to crown us this and that. Player of the year here. The newcomer of the year there. Job's not done. Got to keep going. So those are my thoughts from the game.
And Eric, I'll let you talk about this. And you and Ed have been really big on CJ being the main guy off the bench and having to contribute. And we got some love on Twitter for pointing that out. I don't think it's hard to point out, but just talk about CJ's impact, Eric, and how the Lobos are really different when he's able to score like that. And it's not. I feel like his defense is also a factor.
Well, I'll start with he's an experienced player, right? He's played at some of the highest level basketball that you can in the country in the Big 12. He was recruited out of high school to play at Oklahoma, played 2 seasons there. But I think not only the experience, but the style of play, he's a physical player. He's not afraid to take it downhill and gut to the rim. But yeah, I think early in the season when he was kind of struggling to knock down shots, he transferred to UNM as a 39% 3-point shooter. So we knew that we were going to be getting that sort of player. It just didn't come to fruition until this last game when he just kind of burst out into flames. But Pitino kind of stressed this, and I think he mentioned it in a few different pressers over the course of the season, was if you're not really having the best night offensively, then just continue to focus on things that you can control, like the defensive effort, right? Like focus your energy there. And that was one thing that Noland continued to do, and I think is a big reason why he continues to get the minutes that he does, specifically over guys like Braden Appelhans. And it's not a knock on Braden, but I just think that Noland being on the floor, you're really not going to lose a step defensively by putting him into the rotation. He might lose a little bit of size being at 6'4", having to guard a bigger or having to defend a bigger guard, but he's held his own, and he's been one of the probably the guys on the defensive side of the rotation to play well, to cause havoc, to get deflections, to get some steals. I even think he's going up there and swatting some blocks too, man. I think in that last game at Utah State, I don't think we saw him coming from behind in that lane block. He came from behind the guy and batted the ball against the backboard. He just has that element and style of play to his game that is really uncoachable. Like some guys have that and some guys don't. But CJ has that. But CJ also has different levels to his game, and I think he's finally starting to elevate it, starting to knock down some shots. And this just adds a whole nother layer on top of his game and what kind of adds to the Lobos repertoire, right? Because they're not extremely deep at that shooting position at the 2 or 3. But if he can play like that or even half as good as he played against Colorado State on a consistent basis, then the Lobos are really cooking with gas, man, because that was a fun sight to see. He was having fun out there, and I know his mom is actually really active on Twitter. She had Lobo Twitter kind of raving about it. So, man, I'm excited. I'm happy for him. He's a good dude too, and I'm just glad the way the Lobos are playing right now. Everything's kind of starting on the defensive side, and once they get kind of that pace rolling up and down, they're a fun team to watch.
You know, Ryan, I'll go to you for this. What are your thoughts on Nelly? I guess, did you see him? You know, we talked to him at Media Day. He was expected to be an all-conference type player, had a good season last year, but did you expect him to become this type of player? You know, in JT Toppin's, you know, in his leaving, he's getting more opportunities in space. But did you foresee Nelly hitting this type of level?
I mean, that's why I asked Ed the other night if he's the way he's played, if he's one of the best, if not best centers in UNM. We're doing a lot of that lately because apparently when you go 10-1 in the Mountain West Conference, you know, if you want to crown them, crown their ass. I don't know, man. Him and Donnie seem to be a very, very good 1-2 punch. And a side note, because I hadn't been on in a while, when I was watching Utah State and they were down 6, I thought, this is the same old shit. Get on the road like last year and the year before and kind of, you know, poop the bed, to watch my language there. But I don't know, man. I think they're a really good 1-2 punch. I always say this on the show. You guys are the X's and O's guy. I'm the fan that loses money on college basketball, and I haven't watched as much as I had in the last 2 or 3 years. When I watch him, he's very athletic. And think about this: since he hit that shot against Nevada, they've been rolling, man. They really have. I don't know. I think it's a very good 1-2 punch. It's a very good 1-2 punch in the conference. And you might have to say maybe this side of the Mississippi. Again, I'm not up on it as much. I went the other night. I was actually happy to go, and I don't know. I don't know who he plays like, who he reminds me of, Rick. I was trying to figure that out. You know, like when I look at Donnie, you had said Rod Strickland, right?
Yeah, it's hard to find one for Nelly. I was trying to think about it earlier. And Eric, and you know, we were talking about the impact of Nelly and how valuable he is. That game that they lost against San Jose, I think he only played about 20 minutes and had 20
less
points.
Than 20 minutes, yeah.
And had 20 points in those minutes, right? The game. What other game did they had another game recently with just struggling. Whenever he goes out, they have a hard time. We know Atiki doesn't bring the presence on offense, and on defense, he's starting to get bodied by these heavier guys. But I wanted to bring up this comment. I think this is kind of good while we're kind of breaking down players here, from our guy Ronnie Chavez. I'll let one of you guys answer this, but we're always giving Donnie the love, and I think rightfully so. But Ronnie's question is, what are his weaknesses in his game at this point that we're seeing out there? And I think the obvious one for me is, you know, if he wants to get to the next level, and the things we foresee him doing is probably just the volume of 3-point shooting. Like I mentioned before, he is a good free throw shooter, so that should translate. But other than that, I don't see a lot of weaknesses other than probably having to put on some extra weight to play defense at a higher level. He's a fantastic shot blocker. I think he's in the top 10, maybe still in the conference. But do you guys see many other major weaknesses in Donnie's game?
I'm gonna go first real quick. He needs to shut up. Stop John with the refs.
Amen.
That is a valid point. That was actually what I was going to say too. But
My bad, dude.
I think no, you're good. You're good. We're thinking alike there. But I think he's gotten better at that. I think he still jaws with the refs a little bit, and I mean, who doesn't? I think everybody does at some point. But I think he's gotten better at it. And I mean, early in the season, when the Lobos were kind of hitting a rough patch or just sputtering at times, we even questioned like who is going to be the Lobos on floor like emotional leader. I think we all kind of figured it was going to be a guy like Dent because of we knew what his capability was, but from like an emotional standpoint, someone who's going to be vocal and hold other players accountable. He's definitely kind of stepped up in that sense. But on the court play, I think he's a great defender, great on-ball defender. I think he's a good shot blocker. But in the NBA, he's going to come in at 6'2", right? Like, so NBA scouts are going to look at him as being a little undersized and having to guard someone that might be 6'4", 6'5", even a little bit bigger. So the one-on-one matchups getting posted, I think he's got some good hands. He definitely has the rise in his game to get up and block some shots. But I mean, I don't see him guarding guys like True Washington does or like CJ does and getting real physical. But I think that might be strategic too, because they need him healthy. They need him full of energy. They don't need him wearing down on the defensive side of the ball. But if I had to knit and pick, that would be kind of the thing I would focus on.
You know, I want to weigh in on that too. I think, he's been an amazing, I mentioned the Lobo point guards of the past, and I think he's as good as anyone that we've had here. He really is. Splits double teams, 2 feet in the paint, willing passer. Once he gets in the paint, that medium range jumper is his shot. He was short on shots on Wednesday. I thought he'd get it rolling to the second half. He did. Great on the pick and roll. Great eyes. Great. Will find shooters and a willing passer. Like I said, he doesn't always look for his, and he'll catch you right in the shooting pocket. Boom, catch, shoot. So he knows how to run an offensive team, no doubt about it. Once in a while, forces a little bit. I think sometimes tries to play a little bit of hero ball, and it's understandable. He wants to make those plays, and I think to your point, Eric, about the NBA, he's got a lot of work to do, in my opinion. There, I'm not saying he can't make the league. The league is, he's got the ability to get there. He's got to get better on the 3-point shooting. He's not a volume 3-point shooter, as you mentioned, and that's one of the reasons he wasn't recruited so strongly out of California. And he came here, and we're glad he did. But I think he's got a little bit of work to do there. The referee part, you know what? He's gotten, I think you're right, Eric. The last couple of games, he's kind of calmed down. But there'll be one call a game that he's going to go, hey. And no, the referees are not going to change their call. So I think he's gotten better. The leadership thing, I have to mention this. We did question that earlier in the season. There was a flight. They're coming back from the plane a couple of weeks ago, and he went and talked to everybody. And I think about where they were. They lost a game to San Jose State. He's telling everybody we're okay. And I think since then, with his performance on the court, everybody's looking to him. He's the guy. Nelly Jr. Joseph is fantastic. Mustafa is fantastic. As far as being having the years of experience that they both have. Amzil came from Dayton, and Nelly came from Iona. They've got a lot of experience. But they look to Dent, to what he does on the court, what he says. He's the unquestioned leader right now. So I think there's still things he needs to work on, and it's a good question by Ronnie. He's 19.9 a game, leads the conference in assists at 6.5. Definitely a candidate for Mountain West Conference Player of the Year. So I don't know when the last time we had one of those here in New Mexico. Was it Tony Snell? I can't even remember. I don't know who our last Mountain West Conference Player of the Year was. But checks all the boxes as far as what New Mexico needs to hopefully, get in the tournament, win a couple of games, get to that Sweet 16, but one game at a time, like Coach Pitino says. It's Air Force tomorrow. Didn't even want to get ahead of that. So, that's what I think about Dan. He's had a fantastic season.
Just one point about the airplane. It's kind of ironic that the two most important points in this team's season took place on an airplane, right? One, the fight plane. Don't talk about fight plane. First rule about fight plane: don't talk about fight plane. Yeah.
Sounds
And the
like
second is a Go ahead, Ryan.
No, you know where I'm going with this. That sounds like a shitty direct to streaming movie called Fight Plane. By the way, it's Kendall
But then the
Williams.
second is obviously Donnie talking to the team after the San Jose loss, and they have not lost since that point in time. So kind of funny that both incidents were on an airplane. Maybe they need a bus in the future.
By the way, I thought I was right. It's Kendall Williams, 2012-13.
Mountain West Conference Player of the Year, last one.
And Darrington was 09-2010 because
Okay, so it's been
I was there for that.
And real quick, would Dent be the last player to earn All-American since Hobson? Is that correct? I think Hobson was third team All-American his last year. And I don't think
That's a good question.
anyone has made it since. There's a question for the chat. There you go, chat.
Yeah. But I know we're kind of talking about CJ Noland and some of the bench play, but can we talk about your boy Rick with Millie? I'm gonna start calling him Millie from Milicevic and his 3.3 gesture.
Millie and Philly.
The dude
Girl,
is
you know it's true.
playing with a ton of confidence, man, and that stroke is looking good, better and better each game. And really, I thought we saw a really solid game out of here in the game prior against Utah State, where he had that 3 in the corner, pump faked, got one guy up in there, and then just kind of real slick kicked it to CJ for that 3. But he's coming around nicely, man. And I don't think anyone could have anticipated that a true freshman stepping into a role like this. He's in the rotation. The Lobos right now are consistently rotating about 7 guys. It's that bench is getting smaller and smaller now that we're like in the depth of conference play. But I'm going to kick it to whoever wants to praise Millie for his play most recently. But man, he's what, 6'10", 250. He even lost some weight in the offseason, but that dude's playing like a freak of nature right now.
Yeah, Jay Millie, diaper dandy, baby, as Dickie V would say. He's really playing like a 3-point specialist role right now, but as his hype man, his brother, whoever tells us on Twitter, he's just scratching the surface. And we've seen that all season, able to score from the mid-range. I think he can put the ball on the floor, and I think, his defense will only get better. But what did you guys that were actually at the game see from him? He seems like he always brings the energy when he hits the floor.
I think what playing with more confidence is what I've seen the last couple of games. If you look at the shooting mechanics, he squares up to the basket. It's got a nice follow through. Now, when they come out to close out on him, if they don't close out on him, he'll give him a head fake, and then one dribble, square up, boom, playing with a lot of confidence. And as you mentioned, Rick, he came in. I remember, I think Eric and I and Ryan might have gone to a practice in July. And I think I told Eric, I said, look at the size of that dude's legs, man. He's a monster. He's huge. And so they wanted him to lose some weight. And he mentioned he had to, cut out the sugars and cut out the pizzas. And he did. He lost some weight, did what they wanted him to do. And Ryan had the strength coach on earlier in the year, and he had mentioned what he asked them to do. And Milicevic did it. And every time I see him come on the floor, he's a stretch guy. He's gonna stretch the floor and open up space more for Donnie and True and the guards out there that are out there. And CJ as well. So I really like him a lot, and I think he's going to be a very good player for well, I hope 2 more years at least 3 more years. You never can't tell these days, but I really like him a lot.
I think one thing too that stands out to me with him is that he's never really sped up. I mean, for being a true freshman, like I think we saw that a little bit with Cade once he got on the floor, just seemed to be a little bit kind of not over pressing, but just kind of playing it a little bit too fast and kind of out of control or just not real comfortable. But he plays it a real smooth at his pace. He gets the ball, he kind of figures out what the play is supposed to do, makes the right decision, but takes the shot if he has it too. And he's not really forceful, but it's kind of within the offense. And I mean, I think we could probably talk about True Washington next and his overall impact, because I think he's been playing out of the guys on the team right at Stent, Nelly, and I do have to say that True Washington is probably playing the third best and solidifying himself with just kind of being an offensive weapon as well. But going back to Millie, I think he's definitely a guy that you can see kind of mix in to this roster or this rotation that's going to be very impactful, play important minutes. Played 18 minutes against Colorado State. I mean, heading into the beginning of the season, I didn't think a true freshman would see that many minutes as soon as he is.
Yeah, and I think like Ed was saying, just really quick, I wanted to mention that the work, and Ryan, you can hop in here. I can't remember the strength and conditioning coach's name, but
Matt Flores.
The work that Matt Flores did with both freshmen, or the two freshmen that are playing right now, and Cade. I'm sure he did work with Daniel Thomas as well. I just haven't seen him without his shirt on in a while, so we'll see those arms. I'm sure they're huge under there. But the two freshmen that are playing, they're grown men already. Cade is huge, so I cannot wait to see them get more time. Mr. Honda, set in 1976 here, is saying this is the best Lobo team in years. They wear down teams in the second half, and as we know, if True Washington plays well, the Lobos win. Ryan, have you ever seen a Lobo team in recent memory that played this type of defense that just sucks the life out of some of the other best teams, within the conference?
That's a good question. I would like to add first that my only criticism of Richard Pitino, coming from a guy who knows nothing about coaching basketball, was that maybe he wasn't the best X's and O's guy. I say that constructive criticism. I think the guy can build a program and find talent. I think the last 2 years, 2022, 2023, 2023, 24, he's been outcoached several times. I maybe the 2009, 2010 team, and Ed can jump in there. I thought they were pretty phenomenal defensively. That team, they ripped off 14 in a row in conference when it was pretty good with BYU and UNLV and Utah, San Diego State doing its thing. To do that, Mel Daniels was the only consensus All-American. I think Kenny Thomas was like a third-team All-American, FYI. I don't know, man. They play defense. They what they've done the last two games, which has impressed me, is they literally step on your throat. And I don't know who was talking about it. My final point here, which was on the offensive side of the ball. I don't know if Dent was under the weather because, he obviously didn't look that well the other night. But by his standards, but he hit a shot over Nee Clifford. And Clifford was it was almost like, I don't want to compare to Jordan, but, the great players, Kobe, he was just like, there's nothing I can do. When you're doing that in the second half offensively, man, and Rick, you played basketball and football. What leads to a great offense? Great defense. Yeah, I don't know. I'm a big defensive guy when it comes to any sport. Look at the NHL and the Stanley Cup Finals, goaltending, MLB postseason, pitching, NFL playoffs. Play defense, get turnovers, you win. I know the Bills aren't playing on Sunday, but they got turnover against Baltimore. My thing is defense, and the way they've stifled a very good Utah State team with those good, by the way, Ian Martinez had 15 points at half tonight. But to put that on, I don't know. I think defensively, man, I was thoroughly, it's not a really good take. I'm thoroughly impressed. And Ed, I'll do it for you. Everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the face. I don't know. They've looked they've looked stellar in the second half defensively. And if they're not having a good offensive game down the stretch here, and the defense wins them a game, maybe they kind of did against UNLV. I don't know. That's going to be super beneficial to them because, my joke is if you don't score, I win. So I hope that answered your question because I know I didn't answer the football question.
It did, and I think the thing for me that's really great going forward is they've won offensively in a number of ways, right? They've had games where they've had a ton of fast break points. They've had these slow down games like against UNLV and Utah State for much of the game where they were not able to get on the run, and they're able to get in their half court and get something out of it. Amzil is still battling. I think that injury, played 22 minutes last night. How did he look out there to you guys? Does he look hobbled? Do you think he's going to be bothered down the stretch here?
Well, I want to answer that because he did. I didn't. This look, he had 7 rebounds, but he did shoot 3 air balls, and he did also hit one at the shot clock buzzer. He hit one from the left wing. He had to throw it up there and went and switched it. But he did, as I mentioned, shoot 3 air balls, and I think that is bothering him, the lift. If you've ever had Plantard, I had it, and it was painful. It really was. They gave me a shot in my heel. I'm like, that's the last time I've ever taken that injection, man. That was not fun. So I think he, the short turnaround, we had mentioned that in the last podcast from Saturday to Wednesday. He had a week before, and I think it bothered him. I do. We'll see what he's like tomorrow. Again, this has all the makings of a big Lobo win. Maybe they won't need him much, but they've got to take care of business, like Coach Pitino said. But I thought he was a little bit hobbled. I did.
Did you say Amzil was hurt? I didn't, I'm just going to be blatantly honest. I didn't know that, but, I was talking to, I'm going to give Troy a shout out. Troy Rivas. He's a real estate guy in here. He runs the Ravens flock at Spectators. I met him through our buddy Drew Herrick. I love Troy, Maryland guy. So, he's a big Mike Loxley fan, but anyway, I like talking. I like bullshit in sports with Troy, but he always texts me now. He's like, Amzil sucks. Amzil sucks. And I just feel like for every that fatal, that buzzer beater at the shot clock was pretty brilliant. But he had 3 or 4 air balls in the first half. So if he's hurt, he gets a benefit of a doubt. But he kind of garbage man role too sometimes. And I made the joke the other night, for every terrible shot he takes, he had like a really good position to get the defensive rebound and kind of messing with him. He's lengthy. I mean, he's awkward. But I don't know. I feel like he does a lot of little things. I don't know if you guys want to piggyback off that. So if he's hurt, he gets a pass on the air balls. But that buzzer, that was right in front of us. And Adam Deal at 1017. Shout out to him. I don't know. That was a cool shot. So, I mean, I'm sure that gives you confidence if you're Allen.
Yeah, I think he's super important. Eric, I'll let you get off mute and take it here. But I still think Amzil is probably the third, most important player right now on the roster. I know True has importance, but I think Amzil has been the most consistent, and he really stepped up and topped and leaving in the last moment here.
Just one last point on Amzil. He's a veteran. He knows he's out. You're exactly right.
Yeah, so I'm impressed with this hustle, even though he's playing on 1 foot or half a back or whatever it is.
I mean, but yeah, Ryan makes a good point. Pulled down 7 rebounds, 2 offensive, still drawing fouls, and still draws kind of like a mismatch problem too, right? Just because of his size. But I think that could probably be another reason why you have a guy like Milicevic coming off the bench and playing 20 minutes as much as we did. But at least that bench is deep enough to spell guys like that when you need him, because I think this is the time of the year where you're going to need to look down that stretch and make sure that everyone's healthy. I don't think he would be out there if he was not feeling well enough to play, or even had the chance to even injure himself a little bit further. So if it's one of those things that's simply just playing through some pain, and he can handle it, because I think he's just one of those players that's too important not to have out there. He's a starter. He's a 5th-year senior. He's a guy with experience. He's 6'9", can play from the outside and can defend and rebound. So Ryan, good point there, and Ricky too, man. But I don't know. I just want
to say it wasn't good enough for me the other night. 18 to 24. Make all your free throws.
Hey, that's the best 3-point shooting they've had in a while. And we joked with Coach Pitino on media day if we were going to be calling this Pitino's Bombinos, like his father's team in the past. And I was joking when I asked them that, because I knew they were going to be bad at shooting the 3. But the last 2 games, they have shot lights out. This game, they were 9 of 14 from the line. Incredible. If they can do that, they're just on another level.
Can we talk about the 17 turnovers, though? That one kind of stood out to me on the stat sheet, which I didn't even realize until after the game. And I don't think many of those turnovers were in the second half. But when Colorado State jumped out to that early lead, they were making a few threes. I think those all came off some early turnovers. Donovan kind of lost one there in the lane. There was a pass that
I
got
only see
intercepted.
seven.
It's kind of
Seven.
it
Seven,
was
not
7?
17.
Yeah.
Holy,
I
I was like,
I was
holy
about to
shit.
say the game would have been wild.
What was I looking at then?
Only 7, Eric.
I'm looking at points off turnover. My bad. Excuse me. I'll put myself back on mute.
No.
That's
No.
impressive. I'll take the 17
Hey,
there.
they had about 0 points off turnovers the last games before that. So 17, I think that, helped them extend that. I think looking ahead towards Air Force should be a short flight for them. It looked like they got the private jet. It's not going to be a fight plane. Weather, who knows, but there should be more Lobo fans there, I'm thinking, than Air Force fans. And if you are going and listening, you need some type of special form to get on base, but enjoy yourself up there. But Ed mentioned top player Ethan Morton. They also have a good big guy that played really good against San Diego State a few weeks ago. Wesley Chelachowski averages about 10 points. But one guy I'm kind of interested, I don't see him playing much this year, is Bo Becker. And I just remember him being a good player on their team last year, but I guess he's gotten injured or fallen out of the rotation. I think the spread right now is at about 16.5. Do you guys see any way the Lobos go up there and lay an egg tomorrow?
Well, what was that stat that we saw? Evan Maya posted that UNM is
I'll bring it
like
up.
number 2 in the country or something like that, with playing the top level teams, the most talented teams in the country, playing them the best, but then dropping down to playing like at the talent level of some of the worst teams in the country. And Jeff Grammer actually had a tweet where they were literally blowing out some of the better teams that they had on their schedule. You talk about like a San Diego State, a Utah State, a Boise State. They're beating them by 18 plus points, but then they're in one possession games against Wyoming. They lose to San Jose State. They have a one possession game against Nevada. So I think that, I don't know how he derived that formula and came up with that stat, but
He pulled it out.
I wouldn't necessarily say this is a trap game. I think they go out there, they handle business, they play defense, they cover that 16, but I don't think Air Force has the firepower that like a San Jose State did. And I think the Lobos are too locked in right now to have a letdown.
Yeah, go ahead, Ryan.
I would just like, I'm back with a vengeance. This is going to be old Ryan. They lose this game, it can be that Shane Gillis meme where he puts the gun in his mouth and then points it, because you are royally fucked if you lose this game. Go ahead, Ed.
I don't know how I follow that, man. Air Force averages 63.2 points per game, and they give up 71.7. New Mexico's been averaging 80 points per game in this streak, so I don't see any way. Remember last year, the big loss at the pit to Air Force. This isn't any kind of team. They're 3-20. They've lost their last 10, 0-12 in the conference. So there's no reason why New Mexico shouldn't go in there, as Coach Pitino said, take care of business. They're a much better team. I don't see any way New Mexico loses this game tomorrow. And I think you mentioned that, Eric and Rick, they're locked in. They've been locked in. And I think the way they've been playing, look at the way they play in transition, pace and space. They like to speed it up. And they've been and Rick, you mentioned that they've won defensively, they've won offensively, a couple of close calls here against Wyoming, a couple other close calls, and they've managed to win. That loss against San Jose State doesn't look as bad as it did when it happened. So I just think this is and they're going for their 20th win of the season. So I just don't see any way New Mexico lays an egg tomorrow. I really don't.
Well, that's good, because Air Force is going for their 21st loss of the season.
Yeah.
Very brutal.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Eric.
No, I was going to say, for me, this game definitely on the defensive side. Air Force likes to run that tricky offense. That offense that Air Force has kind of always been known for, with the back screens and the slips and the back cuts. I think the Lobos are just going to have to focus on that on the defensive side. they might be one of the fastest paced teams in the country, but they're a top 5 defensive team in the country, right? And to me, I think just being able to hold your opponent down and basically strangle them to death is gonna. Ryan, you mentioned it. Defense is kind of a championship mentality. Those strong defensive teams, usually the ones that come out on top. I don't know how much they're going to have to put up offensively. And then again, I'll say it. I just don't think Air Force has the gunpowder to, or the gunpowder to score, to continue
Firepower.
to score, the firepower to continue to score on UNM's defense, especially with how they've been playing lately and how much energy and just overall focus that they've had.
I think
Go ahead,
somebody else mentioned this is one of New Mexico's best teams in years, and we mentioned this, and we don't want to beat it to death. Length, Borovichinen, True, much better, and True and Noland, much better defenders. House was one of the best defenders in the conference, no doubt about that. Mashburn was a great shooter, no doubt about it. He brought a lot to the offense, but defensively, they improved a lot. They really have, and nothing against him, but I think True and Nolan are much better defenders than he was. So I think you're seeing a lot of improvement on the defensive end when those two are in the game, and they go after it defensively. They both want to lock down and get the steals, and when they steal the ball, they score. So they're much better. And look at Borovichinen and his defensive effort on Clifford on Wednesday night. You know, he really had to chase him through a lot of. That's not easy. Eric, you know that. You know, Rick, you and I played more down low than on the as a guard, but yeah, he had to chase a lot of. You know, Colorado State ran a lot of some 5 out. You know, they did have some post looks, but they were trying to free Clifford for whatever look he could get, and I thought Borovichinen did a great job.
Yeah, that's two games. Philly B really shut him down. True and Philly are just creating havoc. Look what they did to Falsalev, Martinez, Bird on San Diego State had a tough time. So as long as they keep that up, they can afford to have these struggles on offense because that's what really propels them. But I'll let you wrap it up here, Eric.
No, I think, Ed, to your point with Philly, I think Will Weber had a question in the presser for Pitino talking about Philly, not necessarily focusing on like his offensive production, but just him having the tough matchups night in and night out, having to defend the best player on the other team. And Pitino was like, yeah, he's kind of owned that role. He kind of been adopted into it and he's executing in it. So if we get 10 points, 10 rebounds from Philly, great. But if he doesn't score anything and he holds their best player to would they hold Neat Clifford to 9 points and he's averaging 17 or 18 in the conference? I think you take that, and that's just the role that Philly B has taken, and it's just a plus night when you get more from it, just icing on the cake. But anyone have any last thoughts before we sign off?
You know what? Just real quick on the football thing. I'm sorry I missed that press conference. I really wanted to be there, but 51 signees, by far the most in recent memory. I'm really excited, and I heard Jeff and JJ talk about it being an FCS All-Star team potentially. Scott Tree Humphrey, the running back from Montana State. How in the heck did we get him here, man? But there's more. That was just part of it. You know, he got some offensive linemen, receivers, a quarterback. I'm really excited, like Orion is. You know, I really like Coach Eck a lot, so I'm looking forward to it. And hopefully, the next point, the next step is getting fans to come back, to the stadium and support the Lobos. And, hopefully Fernando Lobo gets that stadium, redone, or gets work done on it soon. So I'm excited. When I saw the paper, I'm like, wow, 51 player signing class, 34 transfers, 17 high schoolers. Pretty pumped about that.
Rick, I didn't answer that question. What sports grid, whatever. I didn't answer that question when you asked me, and I'm sorry. Yeah, I don't want to get sued by Sports Grid. Yeah, Scott Trey Humphrey, and then he had 3 signees from Albuquerque, New Mexico. Carlos Barea, which is a defensive lineman from La Cueva. I didn't know these by heart. I wanted to do some research. Can't talk. Thomas Pettis, linebacker, freshman, Albuquerque, Volcano Vista. Samson Nahina not gonna work here anymore. And then who else was it? I know this is great radio.
It was that wide receiver from Farmington.
That's it. Oh.
Yeah,
Yep.
I'm excited
Mikey
about
Beck.
this quarterback we got
Yeah.
out here from De La Salle. Coach X said he's really fast, like a track level athlete as far as speed. He's left-handed. He sounds like a weapon. And I think his name is Tua Fave, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm excited about it too, guys. This roster looks like it has a lot of weapons on offense, like 3 good running backs, even outside of Humphrey, Ed. So I think they're going to be loaded there. They got, the quarterback from Idaho and Coach X's son, who should be a stallion as well. So looking forward to football as well.
And I think you guys wanted to do, I don't know when we'll squeeze it in, maybe in the next week or so, dedicate a full episode, live show to UNM football, kind of break down the incoming roster, our incoming transfers, some of the new signees, hopefully land an interview or two, hopefully get Coach Eck back on. That would be awesome.
Yes.
And I think there's a few exciting, like the offensive coordinator would be another big one, or possibly the GM, and his name is Davidson. His first name slipping my mind.
Bo Davidson. Bo, I think.
That would be an interesting conversation too. So be on the lookout for that. We're going to try to get a full dedicated episode to just UNM football. But for you followers, viewers, people that kind of tag along on Twitter, we appreciate you guys. We see all the comments, all the tags. We appreciate you guys watching the show, rewatching it again on YouTube and following on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. You can find all of our stuff on our website at thepitpressnm.com.
Well, before you go, since I haven't been on in like 3 weeks, hold on. To my main man,
Miguel Sanchez.
Good to see you, Ronnie Chavez. When the time is right, can we get Ryan's reaction to Toppin's kick to the nuts? I thought it was clean. I didn't have an issue with it, but what was best about it was Grant McCaslin throwing stuff into the crowd. I did see that. That was fantastic. So I just wanted to finish up there and actually put thought out of what is coming out of my mouth, because I hadn't been back on a while, and I was like, oh, so Rick, I'm sorry I sucked at answering that first question. Eric, I will throw it back. It's good to be back on, though.
Yeah, we'll do a whole football breakdown and get into the roster, because I think there's a lot of studs on there.
Yes, and a shout out to Frank Mercogliano. He told me that we could get the players when they get back to school, which is, it's been like 2 or 3 weeks. So I'm going to bug him again. I was out of it for a while, but go ahead, Rick.
One final thought. I know no one, I don't know if Fernando Lovo or Coach Eck or Coach P ever listen, but if they do, please get all the new football players and introduce them at halftime of one of the remaining basketball games. I saw Illinois do that, where they brought all their new football players on at halftime of a basketball game. Let the fans see the new players. Hopefully that transfers across the street here in the summertime. So there's my Lobo thought of the day.
The football team does not have plans of the Death Star. They're not invading Normandy.
So let's see them.
Chiefs -1.5. Eric, do you want me to wrap it up, or do you want to do it? You were on a roll there, and I interrupted you.
No, go for it. Or go ahead, Rick. You're on the screen. Go ahead.
Okay, since I'm just sitting here with my teeth in my mouth, thank you guys again for watching the Pit Press. We got Ed, Eric, Ryan, Nick Nunez gave us some killer notes. We'll be joining you guys after the Air Force game to break it down. And thank you again. Check us out on Twitter and YouTube, like Eric said. Always got new stuff coming out. Catch you next time.
Richard.